I want to welcome everyone to the Senior Wealth Preservation Seminar. My name is Brian Hamer. With me, my partners who checked you in is Matt Waymeyer and Mike Sinicola. And the company we represent is Accurate Advisory Group. Now, Accurate's been around since 2000, been around quite a while. Our head office is located in Wesley Chapel. So everyone knows where Seven Oaks is, right over here across the street. We are right there in between here and the outlet malls. There's a Sam's Club right in the plaza there. Now, this is my wife and my daughter, who knew that having a little baby girl could change your life so quickly, and it has. We're over in the Seven Oaks Plaza. There's our office. Now, unlike many seminars that you might have attended in the past where they were salesy, maybe product specific, where they breezed over some certain topics, we won't be doing that here tonight. In fact, we'll go into quite a bit of detail. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover here tonight. On the screen, you should see a fish tank or an aquarium. Now, that is my fish tank. That is your fish tank. Everyone has their individual tanks. Inside, you see a bunch of fish. Now, these represent all of your assets, your house, cars, bank accounts, CDs, IRAs, rental properties. Everything you own is inside of your fish tank. Now, at the top, you see an arbitrary number, $1 million. Folks, you could have $100,000 or you could have $100 million. It doesn't matter. It is simply there to represent an estate. Now, more importantly, at the bottom, you see I put 5 holes. Now, these 5 holes represent areas in which you can lose some or all of your assets. I'll repeat that again. These 5 holes that you see at the bottom of the tank are areas in which you can lose some or all of your assets. I'll read them off. They are a little small. 1 is probate. 2 are taxes. 3 is the nursing home. 4, lawsuits. And lastly, 5, it is the stock market. Now, regardless of age, race, gender, we all have these 5 holes at the bottom of our tanks. So what I'm going to do here tonight is I'm going to show you how to plug each of these holes. Stop your assets from leaking out of your fish tank. Now, there is a right way to do it, and there are some common mistakes we see people make time and time again. So not only will I show you the correct way, I will also point out some of those more common mistakes. Accurate Advisory Group is a family office, and all that simply means is that we have all of our divisions under one roof. Simply put, right, if someone needs tax strategies, right, we're bringing in our advanced tax strategists and their team. Okay? If someone needs estate and trust work help, right, we're bringing in the advanced or the trust planning attorneys and their staff. I am right in the middle there, the family office director, as is Mike and Matt. And our goal is to bring in the team members that are needed in your specific situation. Across the top is our investment team. So when you work with Brian, Matt, Mike, Accurate Advisory Group, you're not working with one individual. You're working with a team of 40 salaried individuals behind it. Okay, so everyone is very specialized in what they do, and they've been doing it for quite a long time. Let's go ahead and get started on the first topic. First topic is a topic of probate. Now, if you learn anything about probate, in fact, I'll say this. If it is the only thing you learn, here is what I want it to be. The terms will and probate, I'll repeat that, will and probate are synonymous. They mean the exact same thing, which means if you have a will as your method chosen to distribute assets at your death, your estate would then go to probate. Well, what is probate? Probate is the legal process your family and your beneficiaries will go through when you pass away. Through the probate courts, the probate judge, they do 3 things. Number 1, they'll help pay off all the debts. Number 2, they establish clear title to all the assets and property that you own. And third and finally, they will distribute those assets according to the terms of the will. Now, people often say, Brian, that sounds great. That's exactly why I drafted this will. What's wrong with that? Unfortunately, it doesn't work in that way or that order. There are 4 major problems with probate. Let's cover those. Number 1, probate is expensive. They say the average cost of going through the probate process is anywhere from 5 to 10% or higher of your gross estate. 5 to 10%. Now, who is they who says this? There have been several studies by companies and institutions on probate. We base a lot of our findings off of a group called AARP. Now, we've all heard of them, right? AARP, they did a study on probate. They found the average cost being 5 to 10%. Take a wild guess which state they did the study in. Florida. Great place to start. Arizona, California would be some other good places. So let's break this down and give you a real life example. You have a house, a car, a bank account, and a little bit of stock. You total it all up, again including the value of your home. Let's say it's $1 million. You pass away with a will, and only a will. That was your method you had chose. Your estate would then go to probate. Let's say on the high end, it ends up costing you 10%. What is 10% on $1 million? $100,000. Now, that's pretty outrageous. Let's say it doesn't cost 10%. Right? Let's say you get lucky. I don't know how you pass away and get lucky, but just go with me here. It doesn't cost you 10%. It only ends up costing 4%. What is 4% on $1 million? 40 grand. So on an estate totaling, again, $1 million, including the value of your home, you'll pay probate fees anywhere from $40,000 to $100,000 or higher. I don't know about you folks. Go ahead and call me cheap if you'd like. But when it comes to money, certain things do get under my skin. The fact that I have to pay $1 just to leave things to my family when I'm not here anymore, I'm not okay with that. Because what does it cost you if you want to leave things to your family today? Zero. Nothing. So why, when you're gone, do the court costs, the attorney fees, the probate costs, whatever fees or percentages that you can think of, it is simply too much. Problem 2, probate, simply a process that takes a long time. Average length being 6 months to 2 years or longer. Right? I've been working with retirees here in Florida for 7+ years. I haven't met one family, not one, that has gotten completely finished with probate in under 6 months, especially if real estate's involved. So we've heard the horror stories. They can freeze your bank accounts, right? But let's talk about the real estate. What other fees, dues, and expenses do you still have to pay? You still got to pay a mortgage. Taxes. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Utilities. Yep.
Oh, no. Obviously not. You're dead.
Yep. You got to pay the utilities still. What else?
Association fees.
That's a big one. HOAs, or your association fees. Yeah. So as you can see, the longer this process drags on, the more expensive it can become. Now, problem 3 is becoming increasingly more popular and not in a good way. Probate is public. It's a public legal process. It takes place down at the county courthouse. Unfortunately, anything taking place there is public record, which means a friend, a relative, or a nosy neighbor, anybody, they can go down to the county courthouse, request your probate file, right there get a copy of your will, and see exactly who you're leaving things to and how much. Typically, it includes snapshots of your bank account the day you pass away. They have to account for that, as well as your beneficiaries' names, addresses, and socials. So everything that you've tried to keep private your entire lives, it's now out there for anybody to see. Well, if it's expensive and it takes a long time, problem 4 is it could be stressful. Now, it's not stressful on you folks. We're assuming you're gone. But who is it stressful on? Your heirs, our beneficiaries. And not always, but oftentimes we usually select our oldest or most mature son or daughter, thinking you're doing them some sort of favor. As you can see, all we're really doing is putting a very, very large burden on their shoulders without even potentially realizing it. Why is that? Well, your children could be married, a family of their own, probably a full-time job, or quite potentially live in a different state. So they would have to take time off of work, fly down here to Florida, hire an attorney, and devote potentially years of their time settling mom and dad's estate. Folks, there is nothing good about this probate process. It is certainly one that should be best avoided. So I'm going to ask this question. How can we avoid this nasty probate process?
With living trust.
Living trust, very good. Trust, avoid probate. What else? What else can you do?
Give your money to your children in advance.
Yes, gift your money away. Right? If you gift it away, right, get it out of your name ahead of time, there wouldn't be any probate on that.
Beneficiaries have your bank accounts and stock brokerage accounts.
Very good. On your bank accounts, it's POD, standing for payable on death for beneficiaries. And on your brokerage accounts, it's TOD, transfer on death. Those avoid probate. Joint tenancy, that avoids probate. And there's something else called an enhanced life estate deed or ladybird deed. That also avoids probate. So there are many, many ways to avoid this nasty process. By far the easiest, the least expensive, and fail-proof way is by establishing a revocable living trust. Now folks, trusts aren't new anymore. You've all heard of trusts. The problem is the information that you're hearing about trusts. What is a trust? It is nothing more than a legal entity that you create or have an attorney create for you, and it simply holds title to all of your assets and all of your property so that one day when you're no longer here, everything will go directly to your beneficiaries without probate. It is a very big misconception. I often sit with folks and they say, you know, Brian, we spoke to our attorney. My estate is not worth over $5 million, or I don't have over $1 million in investable assets. He told me I don't need a trust. Folks, it has nothing to do with your net worth, nothing at all, but everything to do with how each asset and property, how they are titled. Does that make sense? All right, let's go over some things to know about a trust. Number one, in comparison to the average cost of going through probate, it is very inexpensive. I will go over the exact cost of setting those up here in just a moment. Number two, trusts. They are very timely. You see the word immediate on the screen. How soon, on average, can you get a death certificate these days? Yeah. Call it a week to 2 weeks. So as soon as your beneficiaries get copies of the death certificates, they can begin cashing in the accounts, taking over the real estate, selling things. It is very immediate. Number three, trusts. They are a private document. Nobody can go down to the county courthouse and get a copy of your trust. Why is that? Exactly. It is truly a private document. Only you and the individuals that you choose to share it with know what is in and out of your trust. And it's also not required to be recorded with the county. So it is truly a private document. Well, if it's inexpensive, it's quick, and it's easy to use, no stress. Folks, take a look at this family on the screen. Do you see how happy they are? Mom and dad just left them a whole bunch of money. Granddaughter's going to UF or something. Now, your family, they're not this happy. The point we're trying to portray here is it reduces or eliminates any of the unnecessary stress, any of the interfamily conflicts that might arise. All right. Now, some typical questions I receive. Hey, Brian, I'm going to start one. I want to set up one of these revocable living trusts. Do I have to hire an attorney every time I want to buy and sell a piece of property or open and close a new bank account? No. No. It is a revocable living trust. You are in complete control of everything. If you want to close your banks at Chase Bank and open up bank accounts at Bank of America, you are free to do so. You would just involve your trust. What if I own property in more than one state? Do you need one trust or two trusts? One. All you need is one family trust that will hold title to all the assets and all the property that you own, regardless of where it's located. It was very common, call it 15 to 20 years ago, when a married couple, they would each have their own trust. That's when the federal estate tax limit was only $600,000. Now, today, for a married couple, it is $23.4 million. So if you don't have over $23.4 million, you won't have a federal estate tax issue. Once you get your documents, your trust documents are pretty thick. There's a summary of your trust that comes in the front pocket. And to retitle your bank accounts, say you bank with Bank of America, you would walk into Bank of America, say, here is my copy of my trust. I'd like to retitle my bank accounts to be inside of my trust. It's very simple. On your brokerage accounts, you just call your broker or advisor, say, I have my trust, here's my copy of the trust. I'd like you to retitle my brokerage account to be inside of my trust. It is very simple to do, especially if someone takes 30 to 40 minutes to show you how to work your trust. And we've covered this already. Can I use POD, payable on death, to avoid probate? The answer is yes. So that solves the probate hole in our fish tank. Let me give an example as to how it can open the liability hole. Mrs. Smith comes to the educational workshop. She learns probate's bad. So she says, you know what? I'm going to go make my daughter beneficiary on all my bank account money. So she does. She goes and adds her daughter as POD, beneficiary. Now years go on. Now Mrs. Smith, her daughter, is in the process of going through a divorce. When Mrs. Smith, her health suddenly declines and she passes away. The minute, the second, the day, payable on death, those accounts become her daughter's. But what's not been finalized yet? The divorce. So you better believe the soon-to-be ex-husband, he'll be coming after the money, right? Had you in the exact same example established a trust, retitled your bank accounts to be inside of your trust, and made your daughter beneficiary, then whatever storm is going on in her life, whether it's an IRS tax lien, a lawsuit, or a divorce, whatever, she can say, you know what? I'm going to leave my money in mom's trust. I'm going to wait for this storm to pass, and then I will take my money out. So a trust provides flexibility, whereas payable on death, transfer on death, they do not. Now, folks, I'm not an attorney, and I cannot create any of these documents for you. After taking the time to learn about these things, people feel a trust. It's something they should have, or at the very least, look into. We have 2 attorneys on staff. They work exclusively for all of our clients. They do the entire estate plan. That is your revocable living trust, durable powers of attorney, healthcare surrogates, living wills, and wills. Every document you need from illness until the day you're not here anymore for a total of $995. $995. Now, it's not $995 per person, it is per family. So if you're single, it is $995. And if you are married, it is also $995, and each spouse will get documents. In addition to the $995, we will correctly retitle your real estate, taking it from your personally held name through the quitclaim deed to be inside of your trust. We will assist you in funding your trust. Now, we can't physically do that for you, but we can guide you in the right direction. You got to bring the summary of your trust into your bank and have them retitle the accounts. Call your broker or advisor, send them a copy of your trust, and have them retitle your brokerage account. The last 2 are extremely important. You get free lifetime calls to the attorney. Why is that a big deal? Well, pick up the phone, call a random attorney on the street, you ask them a couple basic questions. What are they sending you a few weeks later in the mail? A bill. You are not going to receive a bill. You can call and bug the attorneys 100 different times if you would like. You will not receive a bill. And lastly, and most importantly, assistance in estate settlement. Why is that a big deal? Well, you've set everything up correctly today. What are the odds when you're no longer here that your children know how to settle an estate? If you had to guess. They wouldn't. Slim to none. So what happens is your children flip through the book, they look for the attorney's card, they call the attorney, and he says, sure, come on in, I'll help you out. And he's going to charge them 2 to 4% of the assets just to transition it into your kids' names. We don't charge on the back end, folks. We will get with your beneficiaries, and we will assist them in transitioning the assets from your name into their name at no additional charge. Now, folks, if you want to see how a trust could benefit you or your family, just write the word trust on the gold form. That lets us know it's something you'd like to discuss. Maybe you already have a trust. You might have all of those documents, but you haven't had them looked at in quite some time. And what I mean by that is if you drafted your documents prior to 2008 or out of the state of Florida, I highly suggest you have your documents looked at. There is Florida-specific language that is not going to be in your documents that needs to be. Prior to 2008 or out of the state of Florida. And our attorney on one sheet of paper will offer a complimentary review. They will say everything looks great, or these changes, they should be made. At that point in time, you can go back to your original attorney who did the work for you. So it's truly a free review. And there's a checkbox there for that as well. I like my wills, trust, estate plan reviewed. All right, topic 2 is a topic of long-term care in nursing homes. Now, government statistics, 70% of Americans age 65 and above, they will need some sort of long-term care before the day they pass away. 70%. Now, what's the problem with nursing homes these days? Very expensive. Does anyone want to take a guess at the average monthly cost of full-blown care here in Florida?
$7,000 or $8,000?
$7,000 to $10,000 a month, depending on where you go. $7,000 to $10,000 per month. Let's just call it $100,000 a year. Okay? Now, there are 3 ways you can pay for this kind of care. Number 1, You can stroke a check out of your checking, savings, retirement assets. I don't suggest you do that. Number 2 is through what is called long-term care insurance. By a show of hands, how many of us have long-term care in the room? 0. I'm a firm believer in long-term care. Why doesn't the whole room have it? And it's also expensive. Yes. So point is, it's just not a good solution for the majority of us in the room. And the third and the only other way to pay for this kind of care is through Medicaid. What's the problem with Medicaid? You can't have any assets. Yep. What else have you heard? Maybe not the best facilities, right? What I'm going to do in the next, call it 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to show you how you can keep all of your assets, keep them all, and have Medicaid pay the entire nursing home bill. What I'm about to speak about is Florida specific, so if you're not a resident of Florida, this would not pertain to you. Florida specific. In Florida, your primary residence, your homesteaded property, it is an exempt asset from nursing homes. They can't force you to sell it. They can't put a lien on it. It is guaranteed to go to your heirs. 1 car. Now, there's no stipulation as to the value of the 1 car. So if you know some friends, some neighbors, they might be needing some sort of long-term care, and you see them suddenly pull up in a brand new 2021 Tesla. They might be trying to protect some of their money. Now, if you're married, you get the house, you get the car, and you get roughly $126,000. If you have more than $126,000, you should make it exempt through Medicaid planning strategies. Now, if you're single, meaning divorced, widow, widower, not currently married, you're single, you get the house, you get the car, and you get a whopping $2,000. If you have more than $2,000, you better be making your assets exempt through Medicaid planning strategies. So, what is a Medicaid planning strategy? For the purpose of tonight's setting, I'll go over a few in detail. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they have a house, a car, a bank account, and a little bit of stock. Right? House, car, bank account, and a little bit of stock. Let's say it's $1 million. Right? House, car, plus $1 million in assets. Mrs. Smith needs to go to the nursing home, so she does. What Mr. Smith can do, he can go out and purchase $1 million worth of rental property, and Medicaid will pay the entire nursing home bill. Rental property is also an exempt asset. All right, so how does it work? Mrs. Smith goes into the nursing home. Mr. Smith goes out and buys $1 million of rental property. He can buy $200,000 pieces of property, or a nice piece of property for $1 million. You've got to rent it out at fair market value. So you can't rent it out to your kids for $10 a month. It's got to be rented at fair market value. And the nursing home or Medicaid will pay the entire nursing home bill. We can protect assets. We cannot protect income. Okay? So Mrs. Smith, who's in the nursing home, she probably gets a Social Security check, maybe a pension, because those were popular back in the day. That's income in her name. The nursing home will get the income. If you're married, you get to keep the rental income. And if you're single on those rental properties, the nursing home will get the rental income. They'll let you pay the property taxes, the upkeep, the maintenance, and if there's a mortgage, but they will take the net rent. And whatever the difference is there, say all that, the Social Security pension and the rental income adds up to $6,000 and the cost of care at that time is $10,000, that's called the difference, the gap. They will step in and pay the gap, the difference. So let's say Mrs. Smith stays in the nursing home for 4 years before she unfortunately passes away. When she passes away, what Mr. Smith is going to do, he's going to wait for the tenants to vacate the property. He is going to sell the rental properties, and he's going to put the $1 million back in his pocket. So he protected him and his wife's assets, got the care that she needed for 4 years, and didn't have to spend down $100,000 a year. So just know that you have options, and you don't need to go broke spending down all of your money on a monthly basis. There's something else called a personal service contract, a PSK. Personal service contract is simply a safe haven for a chunk of your money. Think of a personal service contract as a bank account. It is also an exempt asset. You can't put all of your money into a personal service contract. It's age and life expectancy based. You can put $35,000 per year times your life expectancy. So you can put, if you were expected to live for 10 years, you could put $350,000 into this personal service contract. It is simply a safe haven for a chunk of your money. It's an exempt bank account. That's all it is. No, elder law attorneys draw this up for you. So elder law attorneys, they're the ones that draw up personal service contracts for you. All right? There's something else called a fixed term annuity. Now, we've all heard the word annuity, right? This is no annuity you've ever heard of unless you've tried to qualify for Medicaid. It is simply for Medicaid qualification. You don't go into this fixed term annuity to make money. It pays zero. You go into the fixed term annuity to protect your assets from being spent down. Right? Only one of those in the country. Fixed term annuity. Now, folks, we've all heard of the 5-year rule, right? The 5-year look back. Yep. So what it is it's the look back period. They're saying if you're going to give away your money to your kids and family, you've got to do it 5 full years before ever trying to qualify for this. Try giving away all of your assets and living for 5 years. It doesn't work out too well. All right? Everything we just spoke about, whether it was rental property, the fixed term annuity, or the personal service contract, we didn't give anything away. It was all done in our own names, so there is no look back period. All of this planning can be done at time of need. You don't have to do it 5 years in advance. What do you think you get when you put the word crisis and lawyer together? A nice big bill, right? You walk into an elder law attorney's office and say, hey, I'd like to discuss putting together a Medicaid plan. Their eyes would light up and they would charge you $40,000 to $50,000 just to cover some of these concepts we talked about here tonight. So before you ever try to qualify for this on your own, make sure you have your ducks in a row. 3 simple words can make you lose probably one of your largest assets. Does anyone know what those 3 words are? The 3 words are intent to return. Intent to return. You've got to go down to the Medicaid office. Mrs. Smith, do you ever plan to return to your primary residence? You say, I'm 78 years old, I have dementia, I think I need to stay here, this is it. They're going to say, thank you for coming in today, Mrs. Smith. Go ahead and sell your primary residence, and then you can pay for this care. Right? Same exact concept. You walk in there, Mrs. Smith, do you ever plan to go back to your primary residence? Oh yeah, I'm only going to be here for a few weeks. I'll be back cooking dinner for the family. Right? This is not my final spot. Okay, onward we go. 3 simple words can make you lose one of your largest exempt assets and making it non-exempt. So have your ducks in a row. If you want to learn about some other strategies that we use to protect client assets, just put M as in Mary, P as in Paul for Medicaid planning, or there's a checkbox for long-term care services. Topic 3 is the topic of interest rates. Now, that should be a relatively short conversation. Interest rates are what?
0.
0. Virtually 0. And that weighs heavily on a lot of us in the room. You've worked an awfully long time to generate your money. Now, as you approach retirement, or you're in retirement, you want your money or you need your money to work for you. If you don't care about risk, you can open the Wall Street Journal and throw thousands of darts at all the different investments. You could probably make a lot of money. You could probably lose a heck of a lot too. If you do care about risk, there are only 3 principally protected investments in the country. Let's cover those. Number 1 is a government bond. If your friends or neighbors ever ask you the safest place to invest your money, the government bond is the answer. Why? Well, supposedly our government is not supposed to go out of business. I don't know if I believe that just yet. Okay? Right now, the 10-year Treasury is 1.25%. So if you want to lock your money up for 10 years, they will be happy to pay you 1.25% per year. Not extremely attractive. The second place for principally protected investments are through bank accounts and CDs. Your bank accounts and CDs are FDIC insured, up to $250,000 per account. What are bank accounts paying you? Again, nothing. But they're safe, they're liquid, and people have been used to them for years. What about your CDs? Anyone have a decent CD rate? Right now, CD rates are very low. We have an account right now that gives you 3.1% for 5 years. It's 5 years, 3.1%. That is for individuals that want guarantees in their portfolio. If the market's up 10, you get 3.1. If it's down 8, you get 3.1 for 5 years. If you want to make more than 3.1, the only other place, through annuities and insurance companies. Now, we've all heard of annuities. What are some things you've heard? Very good term. Some are expensive, right? So there are many different kinds of annuities. On this end of the spectrum are fixed annuities. They pay a fixed rate of return for a period of time. Typically, there are no fees associated on this side. On the other side of the spectrum are variable annuities, right? They vary with the market. You can make money, you can lose money. Typically, on this side of the spectrum are a little bit higher fees. And right in the middle of those two is something called a fixed indexed annuity. Fixed meaning you can't lose. Index meaning you're choosing an index to track, maybe the S&P, the Russell, the NASDAQ, whatever it might be. An annuity is just the chassis that it's on. Right now, we have a fixed index annuity that gives you 90% of the S&P with no downside and no fees. That's as simple as it gets. 90% of the S&P, no downside, no fees. Yep. You can make and not lose because you're contractually entering into a contract with that particular carrier, right? And they have your money for a set amount of time, right? Whether it be 7 or 10 years, whatever the term period is. That's the trade-off. That's the trade-off. You're giving up some liquidity. You have access to 10% of your account per year. And I always tell folks, they go 10%. I go, folks, if you're spending more than 10% of your retirement assets on an annual basis, you won't have any money in 10 or 12 years, right? We should be living off of 4 to 5, maybe 6% at most. So I'm not here to talk about annuities. That's one that's tremendous for us that we really like. I'm here to talk about an account that's proprietary to our group. Only our group and a group in California offer it. And for tonight's setting, let's call it the GA, the guaranteed account. There's 3 things I want you to get from that. Number 1, it is guaranteed. It is insured. You can't lose a dollar, just like each of these. Okay, Brian, it's guaranteed. It is insured. Number 2, it is 100% liquid. 100% liquid. Typically, the terms guaranteed and insured and 100% liquid, they don't go together. All right, Brian, how do I make money in this account? You make money based on how the S&P 500 performs. Now, no, your money's not in the stock market. It simply mirrors what the S&P does. Right now, there is a 1% floor and an 8% cap on principally protected 100% liquid money. So, if the S&P goes up 10, what do you get? 8. If the S&P goes up 5, what do you get? 5. If the S&P goes down 20, what do you get? 1. So it doesn't matter what the S&P does, you will make between 1 and 8% on principally protected, completely liquid money. We've been doing this account for 10, 12 years now. We haven't found a better place to park principally protected liquid assets for clients. Correct. You put $100,000 in August 1, or we're already past that, September 1. You can take principal and interest, all $100,000 plus interest, 3 days later, 6 months, 8 months later, a year and a half later. There's no penalties. It is very much like your bank account. As you can put money in and take money out of a bank account, same exact premise. It's been hitting the cap 9 of the last 12 years. So, and the cap was a little bit higher back in the earlier days in 2008, 2009. So the cap was around 13, 14 back then. So they've slowly brought the cap down, but it's still liquid money that you can make. You can average 5 to 6% and sleep at night with no risk. If you want to hear more about this account, folks, it's the GA, the guaranteed account. There's a checkbox for that. If you think it's going to be different when we sit down with you, it's not. It's going to be the exact same thing. I'm going to show you my personal account, how it's completely liquid, how I can take money in and out as I please. It's just simply going to pay you more than your bank account is.
What is the limit?
$250,000 per year. Oh, the minimum is your age minus 10,000. So if you're 70, it'd be 60,000. If you're 60, it'd be 50,000. Age minus 10. Next topic. We're going to transition here and talk about some taxes. Let me start by saying the current tax law is 77,000 pages long. Has anyone had a chance to read through all of that? Probably not. Let me highlight some of the key changes. Number one, with prior administrations, the tax law was evaluated every 4 years. With current administration, it is on an annual basis. So the changes that you're going to see on the taxes are going to come much, much quicker down the pipeline than you've ever seen before. And as a result of that, us in the room, everybody, they need very timely, accurate, and pertinent information. So let's take a look at some of the key changes. Number one, the tax rates across the board currently are down by about 3%. So our rates are down by about 3%. Your standard deductions are way up, and your personal exemptions are no more. All right? So standard deduction for a married couple for this tax year is going to be $25,100 off your taxes. For a single person, it's going to be half of that, $12,550. Now, for each individual that is 65 years old and above, you can take an additional $1,300. So if you're married and you're both 65 and above, your total standard deduction for this tax year is going to be $27,700. All right, $27,700. The biggest tax law change is that red arrow. Just to the left of it, you see a few zeros. If you make under $105,000 per year, you can sell gains of your stock without paying any tax. That's the biggest tax law change. Let's say you make $75,000. You're $30,000 below the 105 mark. You can sell $30,000 worth of your Apple stock, Amazon, Google, whatever stock you might have a big gain in, sell $30,000 of it per year without paying any tax. That is a huge advantage, tax advantage. Now you might say, Brian, that sounds great. I wish I could do that, but I don't have any stock. I'm willing to go out on a limb and say most of us in the room have retirement accounts, and you probably haven't paid tax on the retirement accounts. All right, so in the exact same example, you make $75,000, you're 30 below the 105. You can convert $30,000 worth of your taxable retirement account done through a Roth conversion at extremely low 12% tax bracket. Now, I'm not saying to go out and call your advisor, broker, and say, I want to pay all the taxes on my money. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is your broker or your advisor, they should be having these conversations with you. If they're not, they are doing you a disservice. We are in a very, very favorable tax environment. Taxes are very low right now with the expectation that they're going to go up in the future. How many of us in the room think taxes will be higher 20 years from now? Most of us, right? They've already talked about it. It's probably the beginning of next year is when we're looking at higher tax rates. Okay? So just know that's one of the key changes. You're able to sell stock without incurring the tax liability, or you can do Roth conversions at extremely low tax brackets. Anyone in here own rental property? Or business owners? Okay, rental property business owners. You've probably heard of a 1031 exchange. So a 1031 exchange is just going from like-kind to like-kind investment. You have 45 days to identify a new piece of property and a total of 180 days to close on that property. Most people know that. What people do not know is a passive 1031 exchange. You can passively invest in real estate without physically owning it. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say you bought something for $100,000. It's now worth $400,000 years later. You've made a massive gain. You have $300,000 in capital gains. If you do a passive 1031, you get to roll all $400,000 into a passive investment of real estate. You get to defer the taxes just like you do in a 1031. You get 5 to 7% of cash flow, just like if you were still collecting the rent check from the tenant. And if something happened to you along the way, you get the stepped up basis at death, right? And your beneficiaries owe no taxes. That is how we get around some of the tax problems through real estate or appreciated assets that we might own. Passive 1031 exchanges.
So this is like a fund that is used to purchase real estate, and then you get kind of dividends from that. That's what we're talking about.
Yep. Yep. So you're gonna get the same kind of income. So it's invested in real estate, and you get to diversify. So who does it make sense for? People whose income is not keeping up with where it should be, right? The values of our properties have shot up, but maybe you can't charge much more to your tenants without losing them. So you're missing out on income. You want to diversify, or you're tired of taking the leaky toilet phone calls. All of those kinds of scenarios make sense for a passive 1031 where it's professionally managed for you. You don't take any phone calls. You still get the same income or maybe even greater income than what you're typically receiving now, and you've deferred the taxes as well. All right, passive 1031s. On the screen, you should see a map of the United States with a lot of orange dots and areas. Does anyone know what a qualified opportunity zone is? Have you ever heard of these? A qualified opportunity zone came around in the Trump administration, 2017. They become increasingly more popular, and the Biden administration loves them so much, they're not going away. What is a qualified opportunity zone, and who does it pertain to? Everybody in this room that has any sort of capital gain in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, ETFs, artwork, any capital gain you've made in any kind of investment qualifies for an opportunity zone. So let's say you have $1 million capital gain. You can roll the $1 million, the capital gain, into a qualified opportunity fund, opportunity zone, right? Defer the taxes out until 2026, so another 5 years, at which point you get a 10% step up in your basis, right? So you're getting a 10% step up on your basis, so you're going to pay less tax. You've deferred it for another 5 years till 2026, and if you hold the investment for 10 years, all of the growth that you made inside of the investment is tax-free. So let's say the $1 million went in, you've deferred the taxes for 5 more years, you got your 10% reduction in your taxes, you hold it for a total of 10 years, let's say the $1 million grew to $2 million. Right? Your money should double every 10 or 12 years. So you doubled your money. That additional $1 million growth you made is tax-free. That is what we call DRE. We've deferred our taxes, reduced our taxes, and eliminated our taxes. DRE. So folks, writing a check to the government and going your separate way on a large capital gain is not the best way to handle a tax situation. And we have one of the best advanced tax strategist teams in the country in our office in Wesley Chapel. We're very proud of our team, right? And what they do strictly is help people reduce their taxes, put actual tax plans in place for you. There's a difference between a CPA, someone you take your tax returns to prepare it for you and just punch in some numbers, and an advanced tax planner. Very different people. One prepares your taxes, one does not. One implements strategies for you. Do you think do you think Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates will ever use one of your CPAs? No. There is not one chance in a million. And the reason is your CPAs don't even know these strategies exist. Otherwise, you would have heard of them. They would have talked to them with you, right? This is high-level tax planning. So let's walk through that qualified opportunity zone example. You had $1 million capital gain. If you knew nothing else, you'd pay about $250,000 in taxes in 2020. You would net $750,000 and you would go on your happy way and invest your money however you wanted. With our strategy, your whole $1 million rolls into a qualified opportunity fund investment. You owe 0 taxes this year. In 2026, you got your 10% step up in basis. You saved $25,000, and net, After 10 years, you come out almost $250,000 ahead. That is because you didn't stroke a $250,000 check to the government and go on your happy way. You kept the money working for you, compounding interest, right? Defer, reduce, and eliminate your taxes. Has anyone heard of the Secure Act? No. This is a big tax disadvantage, right? This took effect January 1 of 2020, a year and a half ago. Now, that eliminated the stretch IRA. So before this took effect, Mr. Smith has a $1 million retirement account. He passes away and his son is the beneficiary. His son would have been able to drip out a little bit of the money and pay a little bit of the taxes across the course of his lifetime. Now, with this in effect, they have 10 years. Distributions have to be taken within 10 years, the entire account. That's a big tax disadvantage. So on that $1 million account, Mr. Smith's son is going to add $1 million of taxable income to his bottom line over a 10-year period. It's a big tax disadvantage. That is for traditional and Roth accounts, but they've pushed back your required minimum distribution age to 72. Now, what this screams to us is Roth conversion. I always sit with folks and I say, have you thought about a Roth conversion? And they say, yeah, I have, until I see the tax liability. It's a big bill to pay. So I said, well, probably so, but when you incorporate some tax planning strategies, whether it's a solar investment project or a land conservation easement or both of them in conjunction with one another, you can reduce your liability and probably get around to the 18 to 22% tax range, right? Bringing it back down. Who's heard of solar in here in the room? We've all seen commercials and stuff. I'm not talking about solar on your homes. I'm talking about a solar investment project on a qualified nonprofit. Synagogues, churches, universities, education systems, wherever a qualified nonprofit is, right? You invest your money, say it's $100,000 into a solar investment project, you get 3 benefits. Number one, you get a 26% tax credit. That is a dollar for dollar credit back to you. So on a $100,000 investment, you get $26,000 back. You get to write off 85% of that investment. So on $100,000, you get to write off $85,000. And for the next 25 years, you'll get a 4% income stream off this investment. So you've taken a tax liability, stroking a check to the government, and instead of doing that, invested in a solar project, right? And now you get income. You've turned it from a liability into an income-producing asset. 4% income stream for 25 years, 26% tax credit, and an 85% deduction on the entire investment. That in conjunction with a land conservation easement. A land easement is simply a donation of land to the United States government. And in return, they give you benefits. You put $100,000 into a land conservation easement, it's donated to the government. They say, okay, now we're going to give you a 5-to-1 deduction. So you gave us $100,000 in land, we're going to give you a $500,000 tax deduction. So when you couple that with a solar investment project, we are reducing the actual taxation on your Roth conversion. So it makes it much more feasible to look at a Roth conversion, especially in today's environment, our low tax rate environment. Just know that these strategies exist. Again, your CPA has no idea any of these exist. A QCD, it stands for a Qualified Charitable Distribution. That is a direct payment of your required minimum distribution from your IRA account, which you have to take at 72, to a qualified nonprofit. Well, why is that a big deal? Well, this is how we recognize giving to charity now. The days of you writing a check to your favorite charity and deducting it on your taxes are no more. It makes it much more difficult with a higher standard deduction, so if you're not over the standard deduction amount, you're not getting credit for that gift. All right? So it is done through a QCD. Let's give an example. You have a $25,000 required minimum distribution annually. You say, Brian, I normally give $10,000 to Metropolitan Ministries. So we send $10,000 directly to Metropolitan Ministries. You get the other $15,000. You've covered all of your bases. You took your RMD of $25,000, all of it. You gave to charity like you planned to anyway, the $10,000, and you got the tax deduction. You didn't pay tax on $25,000. You paid tax on what you actually took in, the $15,000. That is how we recognize giving to charity and also getting the tax deductions. Right. Last topic of the night. It's a topic of the stock market. Now, I like to start by talking about innovations. Take a look up here. Would we say cell phones have changed a little bit? Who used to have, anyone have one of those big block phones? Those were the things to have back in the day. Yep, the bag phone. They used to be huge. Now you see cell phones today, they're a lot smaller. Now they're starting to get a little bigger again, right, so people can see them. Take a look at the auto industry. There's been a lot of innovation. Can we name some innovation to protect us from car accidents these days? You got airbags, seat belts, lane assistance, right? If you're drifting out of your lane, it'll let you know so you can get back in. The blind spot monitors, right? Let you know if someone's in your blind spot when you're switching lanes. What else? That's a big one. When I first got one of those backup cameras, I thought there's no way I'm ever going to use this thing. Literally cannot back up without it. There's been massive innovation from the cell phone industry to the auto industry. What are some innovations to protect us from the next 2008 market collapse? There's just not much, right? So this is the actual S&P 500 from 1959 until January of this year. Actually, the S&P is up at 4,400 now. And my colleague Matt, who's sitting out there, and I have other colleagues that have been in business for 30 plus years, I go, guys, your job was easy. You kind of put people in things, and they gradually made money over time. Ever since I've been in the business, it's protecting people from 30, 40, 50% market corrections. Those are vastly different times. So I've segmented the same graph into a more smooth green box or a more volatile red box. Looking out into the future, which box do you think are more likely to be in, if you had to guess? It's definitely looking like the red, but again, all of our crystal balls are broken. We can't be for certain, right? It's definitely looking like this right now. So how do we protect your money in the market, and what makes us different? Let me first start by asking this. Who are some big wirehouses that your brokers might work for today? AIG. Who else? CREF. Yep, TIAA. Who are some other broker-dealers in this country? T. Rowe Price. Schwab. Morgan Stanley. Right? Raymond James. Edward Jones. These are all big. Merrill Lynch is a big one. These are all big wirehouses. They want to gather your assets, charge you a fee, and call you once a year. That's the extent of people's investments, right? There are investments out there aside from stocks and bonds. Most people on the retail chain, they just don't hear about these types of investments. So, number one, you got to have the proper mentality. On the left side of the screen is the typical general public. When things are good, people are greedy, right? The markets went up for 9 of the last 11 years. People are still pouring money in today, right? Record amounts of money are still going into the market, into equities today. And on the flip side, when things are down about 30 or 40%, aka the coronavirus last year, people were fearful and they were selling and hitting the road. I'm not a risky person, sell all this. So they're selling at the worst times and they're buying in at the exact worst times. On the right side of the screen is what we want to instill with our clients. We want our clients to be as greedy as they can at the bottoms of markets. So when everyone's running, we want to be able to buy those good companies just at a discount. And then we want to be fearful at the tops of markets. And what I mean by that is you take a step back, you evaluate your portfolio. If things look good, you step back in the market, right? Just know what you want to accomplish with that portfolio, right? Too much risk versus reward. The more risky you are, the more chance of, volatility. So you got to have the proper mindset. On the screen, you should see 6 rental properties. Does anyone know where these are located? Nope. No. No, close. New York, Manhattan. All right? Now, let's pretend you all owned these 6 rental properties. Everyone in the room owns 6 individual rental properties. Let's read this. Does it make sense to rent your real estate if you own it, or just sit on it and hope it goes up in value? What would you do? You'd probably rent it. You could probably make a lot of money off of each of those properties, renting them out, right? So you walk into Jim's office, your advisor, you say, Jim, I own 6 very nice rental properties in Manhattan. How big's my rent check going to be next month? Jim looks at your properties and goes, these are really nice. Unfortunately, renting it out could be a headache. You really don't want to go through with all that, so your rent's going to be 0 for next month. You say, Jim, but these are expensive. I could probably make a lot of money. Yeah, it's a headache. We're going to stay away from that. Okay. You say, Jim, well, I own those 6 properties. Are we going to put homeowners insurance on these? How many of you in the room have homeowners insurance? Everybody. And why do we have homeowners insurance? In case a hurricane comes through or a fire accidentally burns it down, your homeowner's policy would pay you to rebuild. It wouldn't be an ideal situation, right? But you'd be able to start over. Same exact premise here. You walk in, hey, should we put homeowners on these properties? Well, no, we're not generating any income. You probably don't need it, so no, we're not going to put any homeowners on it. That is how people are having their money managed. They're not generating your advisors are not generating additional income for you. They're not buffering you on the downside with a homeowner's like property insurance, right? And all of your money is at risk. Think of these as the best individual stocks in the country. Google, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, Apple, all these companies you can think of that are rock solid and have been around forever and are going to continue to be around. We get into those positions 5 to 7% below what they're currently trading at. So let's say let's say ABC stock's at $100. We're sitting on the sideline waiting for it to drop 7%. The whole time we're sitting on the sideline, we're generating an additional 1% every 30 to 45 days by just sitting on the sideline. Eventually, all good companies are going to lose value, and then it's going to fall to us. And now we own that stock. That's fine. We wanted to own it anyway. And on the way back up, we're collecting the dividend, and we're going to sell it for appreciation of 5 to 15%. So we're getting in at lower prices. We're not overpaying for our stocks. We are buffering, right, ourselves on the downside. We're collecting the dividend just like other people are. We're getting paid to wait on the sideline, and we're selling for appreciation. So we will add about a 5 to 7% percentage of additional income off positions that you probably already own in your portfolio. We will rent out the stock positions, we will sell for appreciation, and you'll collect the dividend like you are now. Right? That's our covered call strategy, and this is not a new strategy. Why is every advisor in the country not doing this? Because it's time consuming, and it takes a lot of effort and work, not on your end, but on the advisor's end. It's a lot easier to say, hey, let me put you in these mutual funds, and I'll call you a year later and send you a birthday card, and I'll charge you a fee, right? That is the difference between how people are having their money managed versus actual money management. We can show you how very little your money is probably being managed as opposed to what we're doing here. This strategy, the wealthiest people in the world, they do this strategy. The Goldman Sachs of the world, they manage the billionaires, they're doing this. Do you think the wealthiest people in the world are sitting in mutual funds waiting for the market to crash like everyone else is sitting in there? Absolutely not. Folks, generate additional income, especially if you're living off of your retirement accounts. You should be generating additional income through covered calls. We can show you how to do it. It's not that difficult, especially if we just take some time to show you the ins and outs of the account. For those of you that say, Brian, that sounds great, but I'm just an indexer. I like to just track an index and Vanguard funds or whatever it is, and just track an index. Well, if you like to do that, we have an account that will give you up to 80% of the S&P, 80% cap on the S&P 500 over a 3-year period. Does anyone think the S&P is going to go up more than 80% in the next 3 years? Probably not, right? It's probably not. So we're pretty safe there on the cap. You get to lock in your gains whenever you want. Whenever you're happy with them, you say, yep, I'm good. I'll lock in my 28%. That's good. The first 20% on the downside buffer, it protects you the first 20% in losses. Meaning you don't lose money until the market goes down more than 20%. The annual fee is 1.25%. Folks, if your advisors aren't using guaranteed accounts, if they're not using buffers in their accounts and stop losses, if they are not generating additional income or protecting your assets on the downside, what are you paying them for? You don't need to pay an advisor to buy Apple and Amazon and Microsoft. Anybody can go do that out of their own house. This is tax deferred as well. Yes. Yep. Folks, it's simple. We lay some options out for you. We go, you're tracking the S&P right now. You have no downside protection. So when it goes down 20, you lose 20. When it goes up whatever, you get whatever. Same thing here. We get whatever on the upside, just the same as you do. But on the downside, we don't lose the first 20% like everybody else loses. That is how people actually have their money managed with our group. That's the difference when you incorporate these different kinds of accounts and safety mechanisms that will allow you to navigate through retirement and not have to go with the big ups and downs. There's going to be another market correction, probably a couple more in all of our lifetimes. If you lost money in the coronavirus downturn when it went down 40%, that is your answer. You have no protections. It's going to happen again because they're captive. They're captive. So you walk into Bank of America and say, I'd like to do some investments. They are going to show you investments specific to Bank of America, right? Merrill Lynch, right? They're not going to be able to offer you accounts that the liquid account that we talked about earlier because they have no clue it exists. Now, folks, everyone that attended tonight, we offer a complimentary cost and risk analysis on your portfolio. Brian, that sounds great. What does it entail? Well, it'll show you on one sheet of paper every position you currently have, what you could lose in the next 2008, how you're currently allocated, and to the nearest dollar, what you are paying in fees. It's amazing. Folks have no clue what they're paying in fees. I had a client with a large Raymond James portfolio, and he goes, my high school buddy's managing my money for 16 years. I'm only paying 0.6%. I go, that's really good. Well, he's like, let's go ahead and do the cost and risk. We did the cost and risk. When he got it back, he saw that he was being charged $37,000 per year in mutual fund costs that he had no idea that were coming out on an annual basis. I go, Mr. Client, you've been here for 16 years. If you stay another 10 years, that's another $370,000 just to be in mutual funds. All of these fees that you do not see come out because they take it out and deduct it before they print your statement and send it to you. All right? What does it take to do this? It takes your most recent monthly statement, and it takes about a week for us to turn around for the cost and risk. And 7 key points to wrap up. Your estate plan should be in perfect working order. Your children should be able to settle your estate when you're no longer here. Your durable powers of attorney, they need to have the language Medicaid planning in it. Again, if your documents were drafted prior to 2008 or out of the state of Florida, this language will not be in your documents, and it needs to be to do any of the Medicaid planning we discussed earlier. The safe money. Get your best rates available. That's our guaranteed account. It's insured. It's 100% liquid. Make between 1% and 8% on principally protected money. The 1031 exchanges will help you avoid taxes on the real estate sales. Your risky money. Have a risk management plan. Right? If you call your advisor tomorrow and you say, Jim, what's the plan for my money when the market drops 40% again? What do you think he's going to say? He'll be a little nicer. He'll say, hang in there, hang in there. It's going to come back. Right? It'll come back. Give it some time. Or he could say, I got an appointment coming in 30 minutes. Let me call you back in a few hours. Right? Moral of the story is, if you saw money go down in your account, the coronavirus, that's your answer. There is no protections. The cash flow. We will maximize potential cash flow by adding 5 to 7% of additional income through our covered call portfolio strategy off positions that you probably already own. And the cost and risk analysis will help you understand all of your fees. Just need the most recent monthly and about a week to turn around, and we'll get that done for you. Once you get the report back, it's yours to do what you want. You can have a friendly or an unfriendly conversation with your advisor. Folks, if you learned something in this brief 1 hour, hour and 15, I guarantee you, you will learn much, much more in a one-on-one setting. I had to be very broad out here tonight, covering a lot of different topics. Brian, I like what you had to say. What are we going to talk about in this appointment? We're going to talk about what you want to talk about. If you want to talk about a trust or the guaranteed account, or you have a tax issue, we'll talk about those things. Right? Brian, where does this consultation take place? Typically at your house or our office, which is right over here. We're very proud of our office. Hopefully you see it one day, but typically for the first meeting, we'll come to you just to make it easy. All right? And we've learned that you retired folks, or if you're still working, you're probably much more busy than we even are. Okay? So if you can think of some days and times that are better for yourself, as dinner is served tonight, Matt, Mike, and myself will come around and we'll collect the gold forms. We'll try to get you scheduled on the day and time you're looking for. And folks, we're nice people. If you need to cancel or reschedule the appointment, okay, that's fine. So folks, I hope you learned something tonight. I appreciate you for coming out. If you didn't learn anything, just see the hostess on the way out. She'll reimburse you the cost of tonight's admission. Thank you very much. Enjoy dinner.